My name is Cora Bennett. I'm 28 years old. And 6 days before my father's funeral, I found out my stepmother had already emptied his life insurance policy. All of it. $231,000. Money my father told me, on his deathbed, was mine. She used it to pay off her son's gambling debts and buy him a condo in Scottsdale. And when I confronted her, she smiled and said, "Your father would have wanted Marcus taken care of. You were never his priority. You just couldn't see it." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I drove to my grandfather's house, sat at his kitchen table, and told him everything. What he did over the next 30 days turned our entire town inside out. Before we go any further, if this story hits close to home, I'd appreciate it if you hit like and subscribe, but only if it genuinely means something to you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Back to when I still believed family meant something. I grew up in Harlow Springs, Arizona. Population 9,000, give or take. The kind of town where the grocery store cashier knows your dog's name, and the 4th of July parade is the social event of the year. Our house was on Sycamore Lane, a tan stucco ranch with a red front door and a mesquite tree in the yard that my father planted the year I was born. Dad was a firefighter, 22 years with Harlow Springs Station 3. Broad shoulders, quiet voice, the kind of man who fixed your fence without being asked and never mentioned it afterward. Mom died when I was 4, ovarian cancer. I don't remember her face from life, only from photographs. Dad raised me alone for 7 years. We were a unit. Saturday morning pancakes. Homework at the kitchen table while he cleaned his gear. Drives out to the desert at sunset where he'd point at the mountains and say, "Cora, everything worth having takes patience." Even those mountains didn't show up overnight. Then he married Valerie. I was 11. Valerie Crane, recently divorced, relocated from Tucson with her 13-year-old son Marcus. She worked reception at the dental office on First Street. Blonde hair, bright smile, perfume that smelled like gardenias and ambition. Dad met her at a fundraiser for the fire department. 6 months later, she moved in. 8 months after that, they were married. I wanted to like her, I tried. But Valerie had a way of filling a room that left no space for anyone else. She redecorated the house within a month. Mom's photos came off the hallway wall and went into a box in the garage. The red front door got painted beige. "Neutral tones sell better," she said. Even though we weren't selling. Marcus got the bigger bedroom because he was older. I didn't argue. Dad said we were a family now, and families make adjustments. So I adjusted. For 17 years I adjusted. Marcus was 2 years older than me and operated on a principle I didn't have a name for until much later. The world owed him something, and if it didn't deliver, someone else should cover the tab. He dropped out of community college after 1 semester. Valerie called the professors elitist. He got fired from the tire shop on Route 12 for showing up late 11 times in 2 months. Valerie said the manager had anger issues. He borrowed $3,000 from Dad for a business opportunity that turned out to be an online poker account. Valerie said everyone makes mistakes. Me? I put myself through nursing school, worked nights at the Quick Stop on Elm Street to pay for scrubs and textbooks. Graduated top of my class. Got hired at Harlow Springs Memorial before the ink on my diploma was dry. The day I brought home my nursing license, I set it on the kitchen counter. Valerie glanced at it while pouring wine and said, "That's great, sweetie. Marcus is thinking about getting his real estate license. Wouldn't that be exciting?" Dad was in his recliner. He looked at me across the room. He didn't say anything in front of Valerie. He never did. But later that night, he knocked on my apartment door. I'd moved out by then. A small 1-bedroom on Juniper Road. He stood in the doorway holding a frame he'd bought at the hardware store. "For your license," he said. "I want you to know I see you, Cora. I always have. I hung it on the wall above my desk. It's still there." Dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in March. Stage 4. The doctor at the oncology center in Phoenix gave him 4 to 6 months. He lasted 5. Those 5 months, I drove the 40 minutes to Phoenix every other day after my shifts, sat beside his bed. Read to him. Adjusted his IV when the nurses were busy. Held his hand when the morphine wasn't enough. Valerie came twice a week, sometimes 3. She'd stay an hour, check her phone, kiss his forehead, and leave. Marcus came once in 5 months. He stood in the doorway for 12 minutes, said hang in there, Phil, and went to the parking lot to take a call. 3 weeks before he died, Dad asked the nurse to give us the room. His voice was thin, barely there, like wind through a cracked window. He reached under his pillow and pulled out a manila envelope. Cora, listen to me carefully. Inside was a printout from his life insurance policy. Northwestern Mutual. Benefit amount, $231,000. Beneficiary, Cora Ann Bennett. This is yours, he said. I changed the beneficiary last year. Valerie doesn't know. I need you to hear me. This money is for your future. A house, retirement savings, whatever you need. Do not let anyone take this from you. His hand tightened around mine. His fingers were so thin I could feel every bone. I should have done more for you, kid. I should have spoken up. I spent 20 years keeping the peace and I lost you in the process. You didn't lose me, Dad. Promise me you'll protect this. I promise. He closed his eyes. I sat there until the nurse came back. I didn't know it then, but Valerie had already made her move 3 months earlier. Dad died on a Tuesday, August 19th. The funeral was that Saturday at Grace Community Church on Birch Avenue. 200 people. The entire fire department in dress uniform. A flag-draped casket because he'd served in the army before he was a firefighter. I sat in the front pew. Valerie sat beside me in black, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief she'd ironed that morning. Marcus sat behind us, scrolling his phone during the eulogy. After the service, I stood at the reception in the church hall, shaking hands and accepting casseroles and trying not to dissolve. Valerie worked the room like she was hosting a charity gala, touching arms, tilting her head, telling everyone how lost she felt without Phil. He was my rock, she said to Mrs. Delgado from the dental office. I don't know how I'll go on. She knew exactly how she'd go on. She'd already figured that out. 6 days after the funeral, I called Northwestern Mutual. Routine. I had the policy number, the beneficiary documents Dad gave me. I expected paperwork, maybe a waiting period, standard process. The woman on the line pulled up the account, verified my identity. Then a pause. The kind of pause that changes the temperature of a room. Miss Bennett, I'm showing that a claim was filed on this policy and benefits were disbursed 12 days ago. I set my coffee down. That's not possible. I didn't file a claim. The claim was filed by the policyholder's spouse, Valerie Collins Bennett, as the listed beneficiary. I'm the beneficiary. My father changed it last year. More keyboard sounds. Ma'am. I'm looking at the current beneficiary designation on file. It shows Valerie Collins Bennett, updated 14 months ago. The previous change you're referencing appears to have been superseded. My vision narrowed. Superseded how? A new beneficiary change form was submitted and processed 3 months before the insured's passing. The signature matches the policyholder's on file, 3 months before he died. When he was on heavy medication. When he could barely hold a pen. When Valerie was his primary caregiver at home, before he moved to the Phoenix facility, she'd changed it back. She'd waited until he was too sick to notice, and she'd changed it back. The full $231,000 was disbursed? Yes, ma'am. Via direct deposit to the beneficiary's designated account. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the wall. The frame with my nursing license hung above my desk. I could hear Dad's voice. Do not let anyone take this from you. I drove to the house on Sycamore Lane. The beige front door was unlocked. Valerie was in the kitchen, arranging sympathy flowers into vases, still in her bathrobe at 2 in the afternoon. The gardenia's perfume. Always the gardenias. Valerie. Where is my father's life insurance money? She didn't stop arranging. Didn't even look up. That money was disbursed to me, as his wife. It's being handled. Dad changed the beneficiary to me. He told me. He showed me the documents. She set down a stem of white lilies and finally turned. Her face was composed, pleasant even, the way you'd look at someone complaining about the weather. Your father was very sick toward the end, Cora. He said a lot of things. He was confused, emotional. I'm sure he believed what he told you, but the legal paperwork says otherwise. You changed it back while he was on morphine. Her eyes didn't flinch. I corrected an error your father made during a period of diminished capacity. As his wife, I had every right to ensure his wishes were properly documented. His wishes were that the money go to me. He made that clear. She picked the lilies back up. Sweetheart, your father loved you. But he also understood that this family has needs. Marcus just got settled into a new place. He's finally getting on his feet. Your father would have wanted that. What new place? Marcus closed on a condo in Scottsdale last week. Lovely neighborhood. It's exactly the kind of stability he needs. Last week, while I was picking out flowers for my father's casket, she was buying her son a condo with my inheritance. How much? That's not really your concern. How much of my father's money did you give Marcus? She sets the vase down, looks at me the way she's always looked at me, like I'm a minor inconvenience in an otherwise well-organized life. Cora, your father provided for this family for over 20 years. That money belongs to this family. I distributed it where it was needed most. Then the line, the one I'll hear in my sleep for the rest of my life. You're a nurse, Cora. You have a paycheck. You have a career. You'll be fine. Marcus needs help. He's always needed help. Your father understood that, even if you don't. You were never the one who needed saving. She picked up the vase and walked to the dining room. Conversation over. I stood in that kitchen, the kitchen where Dad used to make Saturday pancakes, where Mom's photos used to hang in the hallway, where I spent 17 years adjusting, always adjusting. I got in my car. I drove 7 miles to the east side of town where the houses thin out and the desert starts. I pulled into the gravel driveway of a small adobe house with a green tin roof and a wooden porch where a 79-year-old man was sitting in a rocking chair, drinking black coffee from a ceramic mug he'd had since 1978. Grandpa Walter, my father's father, retired judge, 26 years on the Harlow County bench, the sharpest, most principled man I have ever known. He looked at me as I walked up the porch steps, didn't say hello, didn't ask what was wrong. He just watched my face, set his coffee down, and said, "Tell me everything." I told him, all of it, the policy, the beneficiary change, the morphine, the disbursement, Marcus's condo, Valerie's kitchen performance. Every word, every number. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. The wind moved through the desert scrub. A roadrunner crossed the gravel. Then he stood, walked inside, and came back with a brown accordion file. He set it on the table between us. "I've been keeping records since the day your father married that woman," he said. I looked at him. "Grandpa, every financial document Phil shared with me, every conversation I noted, every time I told him to put protections in place, he opens the file. Inside, copies of Dad's original beneficiary designation. Dated correspondence between Grandpa Walter and Dad's financial advisor. A notarized letter from Dad, written 18 months before he died, when he was still lucid, stating his explicit intention that the life insurance proceeds go solely to Cora Ann Bennett. And at the bottom, a handwritten note from Dad to Grandpa Walter. If something happens and Valerie tries to interfere, protect Cora. She's going to need you." My throat closed. Dad knew. He'd known for years what Valerie was capable of, and he'd built a safety net he didn't tell me about because he didn't want to scare me. He just quietly prepared. "I hoped I'd never need this file," Grandpa Walter said. "I spent 26 years on the bench. I know what fraud looks like, and this is fraud." He picked up his phone. "I'm calling Dean Whitfield, best insurance litigation attorney in the county. Then I'm calling someone else." "Who?" He looked at me with eyes that had seen 3 decades of courtroom deception and never once blinked. "Everyone." Grandpa Walter didn't just call a lawyer. He called the Harlow Springs Gazette. Not out of spite, out of precision. He knew exactly what Valerie would do next, because he'd watched her do it for 17 years. Control the story. Play the widow. Rewrite the truth before anyone thought to question it. And he was right. By the next morning, Valerie posted on Facebook, "Grieving the loss of my beloved husband. Please respect our family's privacy during this heartbreaking time. Some people grieve by tearing families apart. I choose grace." 47 prayer hand reactions by noon. But Grandpa Walter had already met with Linda Reyes, the Gazette's senior reporter, handed her the accordion file. The notarized letter. The timeline. The evidence of a beneficiary change made while a terminally ill man was under heavy sedation. Linda published the piece on Thursday. Harlow Springs widow accused of redirecting $231K life insurance payout from stepdaughter. I read it sitting on Grandpa Walter's porch. He sat beside me, coffee in hand, watching the road. The town responded the way small towns do. Slowly at first, then all at once. Valerie's Facebook comments split. The prayer hands disappeared. People started asking questions. By Friday, her post had been shared 200 times, but not the way she wanted. She had every opportunity to come forward and tell the truth, Grandpa Walter told Linda Reyes on camera when the local TV station picked it up. She chose to lie instead. My son trusted her with his family, and she repaid that trust with theft. The interview ran that evening. 79 years old, sitting on his porch in a flannel shirt, voice like gravel and granite. Every sentence measured, every fact verified, no emotion wasted. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Dean Whitfield filed the civil suit on Monday. Fraudulent beneficiary alteration, undue influence over a person of diminished capacity, breach of fiduciary duty. He also referred the case to the county prosecutor's office. Whitfield told me it was one of the most clearly documented cases of insurance fraud he'd seen in 20 years. "Your grandfather is either a prophet or a paranoid genius," he said. "Either way, his record-keeping is going to win this case." Meanwhile, Marcus called me. First time in months. His voice was tight, defensive, already building walls. "Cora, this is insane. Mom said the money was from a joint account. She said Dad wanted me to have the condo. She showed me paperwork." "What paperwork, Marcus?" "Some kind of trust disbursement form. From Dad's financial planner." "Dad didn't have a trust disbursement form, Marcus. He had a life insurance policy, with my name on it." Silence. I could hear him breathing. Then, "She told me you were trying to steal from the family." "Marcus, there is no family money. There's my money, that Dad explicitly left to me. In writing, notarized, witnessed." More silence. A long stretch of it. "I put $60,000 down on the condo," he said quietly. "She gave me another $40,000 for the gambling debts. Said Dad approved it before he passed. $100,000, just for Marcus. And the rest? Valerie's new car. The kitchen renovation she started 2 weeks after the funeral. The deposit on a vacation rental in Sedona. All of it traced. All of it documented." Dean Whitfield pulled every bank statement, every transaction, every receipt. "She spent my father's last gift to me like it was a coupon." 2 weeks later, Marcus did something I didn't expect. He called Dean Whitfield's office directly. "I want to return the condo," he said. "All of it, whatever it takes." I found out from Dean. I called Marcus that night. Why? Because I sat in that condo last night and I couldn't breathe. Every wall, every tile. "It's stolen, Cora. I didn't know. I should have asked. I should have questioned where $100,000 came from when Mom's never had more than $4,000 in her checking account. But I didn't ask because I never ask. That's my problem. That's always been my problem." He paused. "Phil was good to me, better than my own father ever was. And I'm sitting in a house his daughter paid for." The condo went on the market the following week. Marcus moved into a rental studio. He picked up shifts at a warehouse. He didn't complain. We weren't close. We'd never been close. But something shifted between us. Not forgiveness, not yet. Something smaller and more honest than that. Recognition. Two people seeing the same wreckage clearly for the first time. The county prosecutor filed charges in October: felony insurance fraud, forgery, exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Valerie hired a defense attorney who tried every angle. The beneficiary change was legitimate. Phil was of sound mind. It was a family decision. The medical records dismantled every argument. Dad was on 60 milligrams of morphine the week that form was signed. His oncologist testified he lacked the cognitive capacity to understand complex financial documents during that period. The signature analysis showed tremor patterns consistent with advanced illness, not the steady hand of a man making a clear-headed decision. Grandpa Walter sat in the courtroom every day, front row, arms folded. He never spoke during proceedings. He didn't need to. His presence was the statement. Valerie took a plea in December. 2 felony counts reduced to 1, 3 years probation, full restitution of $231,000, 160 hours of community service, no prison time, and a felony on her record that will follow her for the rest of her life. She said nothing in court. No apology, no explanation. She signed the papers, stood up, and walked out the side door. Her attorney had to call her back because she'd left her purse on the table. Marcus's condo sale recovered $112,000. Valerie's assets, the car, the Sedona deposit, the kitchen renovation materials that hadn't been installed yet, recovered another $89,000. The remaining $30,000 is being paid through monthly installments. Every penny tracked. Every dollar returned. Grandpa Walter set up an irrevocable trust the same week. No family trustee, a corporate fiduciary at the bank. Distributions only for my benefit. Education, housing, retirement. He also added something I didn't ask for. $43,000 of his own money. His savings. His pension reserve. Nearly everything he had outside of Social Security and the Adobe house. Grandpa, I can't take that. You're not taking it. I'm placing it where it belongs. He put his hand on the table. Steady, weathered. 79 years of integrity in every line. Your father asked me to protect you. This is me keeping my word, I cried. Right there at the bank officer's desk. A 28-year-old woman crying like she was 5 years old, because the only 2 men who ever valued her had both spent their final resources making sure she'd be okay. Grandpa Walter handed me a tissue. Didn't say it would be all right. Didn't make promises. He just waited until I was done and said, Your father planted that mesquite tree the year you were born. It's still standing. So are you. People ask me if I hate Valerie. I don't. Hate is a full-time job, and I already work 12-hour shifts at the hospital. What I feel is something harder to name. It's the ache of knowing that for 17 years, I shared a dinner table with someone who was always calculating, always measuring, always deciding what I was worth, and her answer was always the same. Less. Less than Marcus. Less than comfort. Less than a condo in Scottsdale. I don't talk to Valerie. I don't visit the house on Sycamore Lane. She still lives there, though the neighbors have gotten quiet. Mrs. Ramirez next door stopped dropping off tamales at Christmas. The dental office let her go in November. Pastor Mitchell at Grace Community suggested she take a leave from the women's ministry. Not asked. Suggested. In Harlow Springs, that's the same thing. I call Grandpa Walter every Sunday evening at 6. He's still in the Adobe house. Still drinks black coffee from that ceramic mug. Last week he told me the porch railing needs replacing. I told him I'd come out over Thanksgiving break. He said he'd believe it when he saw it. Marcus texts me sometimes. Short messages. Nothing heavy. Saw a roadrunner on the way to work. Reminded me of Grandpa's driveway. I reply. Those things are faster than they look. We're not where we were. We were never anywhere real to begin with. But we're building something now, carefully, on ground that might actually hold. A month after the sentencing, a card arrived at my apartment. Cream-colored envelope, Valerie's monogram stationery. I opened it at the kitchen table. Dear Cora, I hope you're doing well. I want you to know that everything I did was for this family. Your father and I discussed finances many times over the years, and I always acted in what I believed was the best interest of everyone. I wish you could see that. I hope in time you will. I read it 3 times. looking for 2 words. They weren't there. I put the card in my desk drawer, next to the framed nursing license, and closed it. She couldn't say it. Even now, even with a felony on her record, even with the whole town knowing exactly what she did, she could not say I'm sorry. That's the part that stays with me. Not the money. Not the courtroom. The silence where an apology should have been. If someone in your family took something from you, not just money, but your trust, your peace, your belief that you mattered, and they never once said they were sorry, even when the evidence was undeniable, could you forgive them? Or would you hold the line? I don't have the answer yet. I'm not sure I ever will. But I'd really like to hear yours. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. It's January now. I'm sitting at my desk after a double shift. The apartment is quiet. My nursing license hangs on the wall. Below it, taped to the shelf, a photo of Dad and me at the fire station when I was 6. He's in his gear. I'm wearing his helmet, and it covers my entire head. We're both laughing. I keep that photo because it reminds me of something I spent 17 years forgetting. I was enough. Before Valerie. Before Marcus. Before the money in the courtroom and the whole town knowing our name for the wrong reasons. I was enough. I'm not telling you this story for sympathy. I'm not telling it for revenge. I'm telling it because somewhere right now someone is sitting in a quiet room staring at numbers that don't add up, wondering if they're crazy. Wondering if it's worth the fight. Wondering if standing up for yourself means losing everything. It might. I won't pretend otherwise. I lost my stepmother. I lost the illusion of a family I'd been performing in for 17 years. I lost months of sleep and years of misplaced trust. But I gained something too. I gained my father's last wish, honored. I gained a grandfather who taught me that love and accountability aren't opposites. They're the same thing. And I gained this. The knowledge that I am not the woman who sits quietly while someone erases her from her own story. Not anymore. If that resonates with you, if you've been the one who adjusts, the one who keeps the peace at the cost of your own peace, I want you to hear me. Protecting yourself is not cruelty. It's not selfishness. It's not tearing a family apart. It's refusing to let someone else tear you apart and call it family. Grandpa Walter. If you're listening, thank you. For the file, for the coffee, for every Sunday phone call, for believing I was worth protecting before I believed it myself. I love you more than I know how to say. Thanks for staying until the end. If this story made you feel something, hit subscribe and tap that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. And if you've ever had someone in your life who took something that belonged to you, your money, your confidence, your sense of home, I want to hear about it. Leave it in the comments. This community reads every single one. There's another story linked below, about a woman whose in-laws tried to sell her late husband's house out from under her while she was still grieving. The way she found out will stay with you. I'll see you there.